I think we are well past any point of skepticism or any engineer that say, hey, this isn't going to be here forever. This isn't my thing. The other thing I'd say from a baseline perspective is engineers no longer should be starting in the traditional code editor, the IDE. Engineering has moved to much more of an agentic approach where you're starting in the terminal or some sort of Cloud Code or Codex app. How we're building software has completely radically shifted. What we're really seeing where true companies are starting to transition is they're stop treating AI as a tool, and they're starting to treat AI as the way that they actually operate. That's where I actually begin my development. And that's from the product and management side as well as to the engineering side. We're trying to see people transition as treat AI as an actual teammate. That's what that baseline minimum is becoming at this point, is you have to start treating these tools that we have as teammates and actually affecting change within your organization.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Practical Founders Podcast, where every week we hear an amazing story from a serious founder who built a valuable software company and did it without big funding. I'm your host, Greg Head, and this week my guest is Nick Olsen, the VP of AI Innovation at Mainsail Partners. Mainsail is a growth equity investor that helps those bootstrapped and growing vertical SaaS founders keep the growth going. So they show up with some investment and they also show up with some help. So half of the Mainsail Partners team is involved in helping across the entire organization. We've talked to some of their experts on the go-to-market and sales side, and Nick is the expert, the AI support team leader for all the portfolio companies. So he's working with 24 software companies, their dev teams, their product teams, and he's got a team himself that's helping them make the most of practical AI acceleration in product and development. So we talk about all the great topics that are happening mid-2026. What's the new baseline for where organizations that Nick is dealing with should be thinking and doing in their dev and product organizations with AI? It's a great discussion. Welcome to the Practical Founders Podcast, Nick.
Hey, how are you? Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
I'm looking forward to this discussion. You are head of AI innovation for one of the growth equity investors that invests in practical founders and takes them through all the scale stages, and you're that consultant expert. So I would love to just sit with you for a day and prompt you with questions and see what your brain answers here. And must be an exciting job. I know you've been a CTO. Now you're, on the, let's say, the growth operations team, helping all the portfolio companies at Mainsail. But are you having fun with that?
Yeah, I'm loving it. Maybe I'll just give you a little background on where I'm coming from and kind of my journey throughout that whole process. So originally come from a CS background, computer science, engineering background. So kind of grew up in the technology world. And actually in the middle of college, started working for a property management company and just an engineering role, and kind of jumped in with two other people. We didn't really know exactly what we were doing, but we owned a bunch of apartment complexes and we said, hey, let's build a platform for our own use.
Yeah.
And went through that whole process. And I think as many probably your listeners here, we ended up stumbling into something where we said, hey, we actually have a software platform that we think we could actually use and start selling, not just manage our own apartment complex, but we see something that we could actually use. And so we ended up shifting gears and starting a whole software company and ended up selling off a bunch of the assets that we had to fund the software company and went
Very
through
practical path, right?
Very
To run
practical
your
path.
business software. Yeah.
We've seen many people do this before, and jumped in, honestly, probably not knowing exactly how to do it, but we're excited about it and jumped in and ended up building an entire software company around managing apartment complexes.
And what was the name of that software company?
Resman was the name of that company. Yeah. So we built that, managed multifamily assets, grew that, went through kind of the typical founder scenario where went through money or struggles finding money, or where are we going to
Yeah.
find the next level of investment? Where are we going to be able to grow? How are we going to be able to take this to the next level? And went through a couple different partners that came through and helped us grow that. And Mainsail Partners was actually one of those from 2017 to 2021. That's how I got first introduced to them, and had a couple different opportunities to be able to scale and grow that team. Went from a team of 3 of us to well over 100, and was able to scale that
In
business.
what? In the development and product organization or
No, as a
yeah.
total
Oh, it's
organization.
a
So
whole
my
company.
particular role was more focused on products and engineering,
Yeah.
but clearly as one of the founding members had wore multiple hats, across
Uh-huh.
the organization. I mean, I did everything from sitting at a trade show floor and selling the actual product to supporting it, implementing it, building it, I
Yeah.
know the whole foundation there. Went through the whole process, but then to your point, which is a little bit more pertinent here, had gone through a couple different exits, and after about 20 years, I finally stepped away from that particular organization and really wanted to get back into more of the growth stage of companies. We'd scaled that company quite large, and I was ready to move back into the early founder stage. And ended up actually was looking to join another portfolio company with the Mainsail Partner Group. I really appreciated the time that I'd spent with them, and this was early last year.
Yeah.
And at that time, instead of joining a portfolio company, we had a number of discussions with the firm saying, "Hey, we're really trying to scale what AI looks like at a small growth stage company. And in order to really do that, we need to be able to support our own portfolio." And
Yeah.
so I joined the team and we ended up building, and now which I run as the head of AI innovation, I run a team of 5 engineers that partner with our portfolio companies to help them build out and scale AI, either in the organization, in their product, releasing features to their teams, really trying to help them understand what it looks like, best practices, what missteps not to make, what lessons learned we can have from the other teams in the portfolio, and just build out a stronger AI footprint within their own platforms.
Well, it's a little bit of how Mainsail does it. I know a couple friends of mine have sold into Mainsail and continued going, or stopped being the CEO, and let the next one scale it. And I've had plenty of founders, Brian of Boost Lingo and Paul of Pro Shop, and we just had Mark of Sanderson from Energy on the podcast. They bootstrap these vertically focused, run your business, complicated, slow moving software. But the compounding started. And just about 10 years in, when people were getting tired and saying, I don't know how to take it from 5 to 20 million or 30 million, Mainsail steps in and says, well, here's a little money off the table for the founders and other investors. And here's some help to help you grow, build your teams, do the AI like you did. I've had Phil Stern from your growth team, your support team at Mainsail on the podcast talking about the sales side, and scaling up sales. So what do you call it at Mainsail, the team members who help the portfolio companies with those deep scale issues?
Yep, the growth team is what we call
Okay.
it, and
Yeah.
half of our team at the firm is focused specifically on just the operation side and growing. You mentioned it, and I experienced it, right? As a
Yeah.
technical founder myself, we got to that point where we were 1, 2, 3 million in revenue, and man, we'd made it. We found product market fit. It was good. But getting to 5 to 10 to 15 million is a totally different story. And we were able to take this growth team, we're able to really partner with the teams and say, all right, here's the lessons learned. Here's what we
Yeah.
figured out.
Yeah.
How can we help actually enable that? Yes, take some money off the table, but more importantly, that jump from 3 to 5 to 15 to 20 is a different run. It's a different story. And that's something that we really have a passion for, is just helping those teams understand what it takes to get to that next level.
Awesome. And from scrappy startup that's working to with sticky and happy customers to a more scaled up version. So, you're a version of private equity. Let's call it growth equity, right? It does minority, majority investments of these 3, 5, 10 million ARR specialty. What else is Mainsail focused on? It seems to be like run your business software for verticals, but Would you say that's this
Yeah,
ERP
that's
kind of thing?
our bread and
Okay.
butter is that vertical focused ERPs. So we really believe, especially in this world getting into the AI topic, we
Yes.
believe that there is some insulation that comes from having very specific focused on niches that we can provide and support our particular customers. We're seeing this happen in the market. The horizontal plays are struggling a little bit, but we do believe there's still a strong footprint in that vertical play, and so we stick highly there.
So when growth equity investors hover around founders as they get to 3, 5 million, they're all talking to them. They talk about, we're not just money, we offer help. You're part of the help at Mainsail that
Correct.
comes in. Do you view that as just so people understand what this is? Are you a nitty-gritty, hands-on advisor/consultant to them? Or are you directing people, telling them what to do, now that you're a part owner? How would you describe that
Good
flavor?
question. Good question. So we set out originally. It was just me. Just the initiative was we have to support our portfolio companies in their AI efforts.
There you go.
And I talked to a bunch of other firms, talked to a bunch of other people, and said like, "How are you running this? Everybody has kind of this problem. We're trying to solve this."
Yeah.
And the more often what we saw in the space was firms would go out and they would hire some sort of consulting agency to say, "Hey, drop into my portfolio company. I'm gonna
Yes.
throw a bunch of money at you. Go make them AI first, and then come back in 6 months in a board meeting and like tell us what the report was."
Yeah.
And I had a bit of a visceral reaction to that, and just being on the operator side, saying that's not helpful. Like I need somebody to be able to engage with me, to actually be hands on and be tactical, and actually show me and help me solve these problems. And so the approach that we took, very different, was we hired in people into our organization at the firm. And the way that we approach things is we are very hands on. They're engineers, and we form a pod with one or two of the engineers from the portfolio company, a product manager, and one or two engineers from my team. And we sit down, we as the engineering on the firm side, we're committing code directly into their code base. We're helping
Oh,
them understand what this actually looks like, being extra leverage on the team, but hands-on side by side building with them, not just, hey, let me meet with you for an hour and point you in the right direction. It's an actual, let me help you commit this code, let me deliver this feature. And then the most important thing about it is because we're part of the firm, part of this growth team, we may step back after 6, 8, 12 weeks or so of this particular engagement, but we're still there. We're still
yeah,
around. We frequently,
yeah.
even though we may move on to another company and help them, we continually meet up with the past companies that we worked with. That exact same team member, they know who we are. We understand their code base. We understand the agents that they're releasing. We're able to continue that relationship, not just a one-time advisory engagement, but as something that's actually someone that's actually partnering with them long term.
Great. Well, that's really exciting. That's why I want to pick your brain on the podcast here. Because how
Do
many
it.
companies are you working with your team? And I know you probably talk to prospective investments as well, just to do the assessment
Correct.
or whatever. But how many companies are you talking to in this
Yeah, our portfolio
arrangement?
is growing. We're, I believe, 25 to 30, somewhere in that range right
Yeah.
now,
Mhm.
of portfolio companies, largely all again in that vertical ERP SaaS space, and then continually talking to new prospective companies all the time.
Okay. Well, and you're probably learning as much as everyone else is. It's changing weekly. You're seeing what some further ahead pods are doing and what some behind and all the difference of the different businesses. Some industries you can say AI to customers and they say, I want that. And other industries say, don't talk to me about that. And, everybody wants faster software delivery velocity of higher quality stuff. And all the rest of that here. So, there's a little bit of the private equity playbook, right? There's an investment and a startup scrappy, bootstrapped. We're going to start spending a little bit more. And maybe there's things like a little debt and a senior leadership team come in and better tooling to understand all the data inside what's happening inside your go to market motions, all the fundamentals that are there, sometimes acquisitions, that come in and helping things move up, business model changes. Sometimes there's the price increase, right, that you can expect, all of that. Is there a playbook for AI these days, or just some laws of nature, or it always just depends?
Yeah, no, I think there is to some degree, and I will say it's starting to formulate and manifest.
Ah,
I think probably a year ago, it felt like it was ridiculously Wild West. Everyone was running around just trying to figure out what's working, what's not,
yeah.
throwing everything at the wall and just seeing what stuck. But I think now moving into kind of mid 26, we're starting to see some patterns land. We're starting to see some tooling kind of solidify, and we're starting to see some things work. So, kind of as the playbook, if you will, or baseline, there are some basics. There's some things that now we're saying, okay, where are we landing from an engineering and a product perspective? What do we need to do? So maybe just kind of to rattle
Okay,
off
so
a
let's
few.
not talk about all the things in the business you could do, go to market, tooling and, financials and every maybe even pricing, that's another thing, but like in product and development, which is so important to practical founders, that's where we get our leverage, that's where we get our sticky customers, and that's where we create the value that allows us to increase prices and so forth. So focusing on that, I know you've written about this on the Mainsail blog. There's plenty of great blog posts out there, and I've seen some of those here. Let's just go through what you think is the baseline mid 2026 for these practical and in your context, vertical, B2B, lightly funded or bootstrap that is trying to scale up and get to the next level. Let's go through some of those, concepts, like what's the new baseline this year that practical founders can hear?
Definitely. So, from a product and engineering standpoint, specifically, maybe more on the engineering, let's just hit some of the base tooling perspective in the team. So,
Yeah.
if you're walking into your team, I think we are well past any point of skepticism or any,
Yep.
any engineer that say, "Hey, this isn't going to be here forever. This isn't my thing." I think we're well past that. So, if you have anyone in your organization that's still skeptical and saying, "Hey, I don't even want to use AI," like clearly, that's a problem. We're well beyond that. That was a world that we could live in last year that maybe made sense because some of the
Yeah,
tooling wasn't
I
quite
remember.
there, but that's not there. Um, the other thing I'd say from a baseline perspective is engineers no longer should be starting in the traditional code editor, the IDE. Engineering has moved to much more of an agentic approach where you're starting in the terminal or some sort of Cloud Code or Codex app. If they're opening up their old IDE and start typing code, that's probably something that's going to be the past. We're definitely seeing things move forward. So the approach that we take from an engineering standpoint and how we're building software has completely radically shifted. I think a little bit more conceptually, though, what we're starting to see now, most people have adopted the tools. They've got AI assisted coding, like they're doing it, like it's all there. But what we're really seeing where true companies are starting to transition is they stop treating AI as a tool and they're starting to treat AI as the way that they actually operate. Okay, so it's not a tool that I'm just going to reach down like Excel is for a financial analyst, but it's actually that's where I start. That's where I actually begin my development. And that's from the product and management side as well as to the engineering side. Like it is actually effectively the way that we're trying to see people transition is treat AI as an actual teammate. It's treating it as something that's actually going to work alongside you the entire way, and not just something that I'm going to pull out as I need it to make me a little bit faster. That's where we're starting to see the transition. That's what that baseline minimum is becoming at this point is you have to start treating these tools that we have as teammates and actually affecting change within your organization.
So agents are the main way that developers code these days, and it's not just vibe coding and talk to it. There's a whole infrastructure that has to be set up to understand your code and evaluate the quality and so forth. But you can kind of look at any development organization for one of your portfolio companies or otherwise and say, are they starting in an agent interface primarily, Cursor or any of these other ones? And if they're not, we got to get them there.
Yeah, definitely. And I think the big piece to that is what you just said at the end is we got to get them there. Again, assuming that we've weeded out all the individuals that are totally against it, it's a process. Like, it is a process to help train and help build up an organization to help understand how to use these tools. And one of the big takeaways that we've had is the old age saying of you've got to slow down to speed up. And that same thing applies here. Like, there is a revolution that's happening from an AI development standpoint. And it's not something that you're just going to pick up overnight. Like, we have to let our teams slow down a bit to understand how to use this tooling, how to build those harnesses, how to build that framework. We do want to move faster, but it requires us to be able to rethink how we approach the problem. And that takes some offline time. We've seen that be super helpful within our portfolio, is to allow the engineers to be able to take weeks at a time, off the normal beaten path and just doing roadmap work, and being able to understand how this tooling works and how do I actually embed this within my workflow. You have to give this time and space for those teams to be able to breathe, to understand and utilize and adopt that. Otherwise, they don't turn that into an actual way to operate. It just continues to be that tool that they pull out as needed.
This podcast is sponsored by Fullscale. Fullscale gives you dedicated senior engineers in the Philippines who are vetted, employed, and supported by Fullscale. They integrate directly with your team so you can move fast and scale in days, not months. They have over 300 active engineers with a 95% retention rate who are trusted by companies across SaaS, fintech, healthcare, and enterprise. Fullscale founder Matt Watson joined us twice on this podcast to talk about his previous practical SaaS founder exits and how AI is changing product development right now. Head to fullscale.io/product-driven for a free copy of his best-selling book, Product Driven, with practical strategies to stop wasting dev cycles and build products customers actually love. Now back to the show. Well, I'm not a coder, so I've been saying for 30 years I've done everything in the software business except code for 30 years, and now I'm vibe coding apps in my spare time. But I'm not a coder, and the coders I know say, well, agentic is powerful, and you could see that that's where engineering and coding is going to happen, but it's not as simple as hook in cursor and go faster. And you talked about training and the mindset, shifting a process for these very specific tactics that engineers have been doing all this time and changing their habits, makes them grumpy, all of that. But what else is required for scalable agentic product engineering to happen that's beyond just everybody's got cursor and everybody likes it?
Yeah, no, I think you hit it on the head. It's, again, last year we just threw licenses at everybody and go figure it out. And now the tooling and the products that we have out there have started to really level out. So the two that we're really heavily focusing on are Cloud Code and Codex. They both do fantastic.
Okay, great. Yeah, there we go.
But
Yeah.
the way that you attack the problem is more important now, right? The way that you actually interact with those tools and how you actually leverage them and making sure that that's consistent across your engineering team is super important. So I'll give you an example. I mean, everyone can pull up their favorite, agent, and they can start typing and they can prompting. And I think everybody's kind of gotten to the point where they can
Look
prompt.
what I did. Magic. Right. Yeah.
Right. But there is a process that starts from the very beginning where you may engage an agent actually to do product discovery. So maybe I have a high level idea of what I would like to accomplish, and this is what I'm hearing my customers say. But we can leverage agents to then jump in and look at the entire backlog, look into all of the support tickets, look at call recordings, look at customer interactions that I have, and start pulling out evidence to be able to support what direction we should actually go with that product. Our human minds and our human, the product manager as a human only has so much context that they can hold within their brain. And one of the unlocks that we have is the ability to have these agents that can now suck up so much more of this context and start actually supporting the narratives that we want to drive the products that we want to build. But that's not just, hey, let me go point Claude Code at a particular set of documents. I mean, that is how do we actually structure this agent and codify our business logic, how we actually operate, what our product management practices are, build that playbook, in essence, of how we do things manually, so to speak, by hand, into that agent. Building those harnesses around the product management practice and then as well the development practice is key.
Okay, so not even it's like you started with outside of engineering with those darn product managers say this is really critical, and the engineers are skeptical, and we're not sure your logic makes sense. Maybe it was the big customer that has the shouts the loudest, or they always want confidence that if we're going to spend a few months on this, that it's going to have the impact that we want. So you're saying that product and development organizations together, right? They can have more fidelity and accuracy about the prioritization of whatever the next project is, with all the data there. So,
Without a doubt. And I think we're seeing as along those lines this collapse of roles, right? The product
yes,
manager, the engineer, the designer, like we're really starting to see our teams form around this cohesive kind of ball of individuals that they take on different roles at different times. One of the biggest things that we're starting to see from a litmus test to like how do I know if I'm an AI first engineering organization is you're starting to see the removal of this handoff. So historically, you have, a customer support agent or product, they're out there gathering requirements and they build up this big old requirements document and
yeah,
they come and deliver it to the
yeah,
engineering team and then they hand that off to the engineering team and then they go build it and then you
yeah,
hand that off to the QA team. Right? So that handoff concept goes away. You have your product manager, your design and your engineers getting closer to the customer, understanding from the very beginning, let's start working together on what this problem is, what the solution is, start building that together earlier. And we just take this idea of approach and we start prototyping immediately. We start jumping in and actually solving the problem and not just, hey, at a theoretical level, but we're actually building the solution and that solution evolves over time. But those three individuals, those three personas are starting to
yeah.
collapse and we're starting to see a lot more velocity, so to speak, because we're starting to work together earlier.
Okay, so it's less about let the engineers be, they're coding, and it's gonna take a while, it's gonna take a long time. That is collapsing. So we're moving right up to, is this really the right next thing we should build in this way, right? And so you mentioned prototyping, so forth. So we're hearing about designers building prototypes all the way to committing code sometimes, or engineers building prototypes, validating customer requirements and building prototypes. Is that now the thing? Is prototype fast, gain confidence, then code? Or
Yes,
is your prototype the code? The winning prototype is the code.
to be honest, it is becoming the latter of what you're talking about. There
Ah,
there is this world for sure where you may have a product manager that may prototype something in a no code tool, and they
right.
bring that to the engineering team to help understand, and that's fine. But more, what we're seeing is the more forward facing and the faster moving teams, you actually have the product manager and the engineer in the code, and you alluded to it, and you said it. Like we actually do have some product managers committing some of
Yeah.
that code and they're working together and we're tearing down this wall of just, oh, I've got my lane that I operate in as a product manager and these are my responsibilities. And we're trying to, this isn't just about a product manager moving more technical. This is also about an engineer moving more product minded, right? We
Which do
want
you
to be
think
able
is harder
to.
of those 2? That's now these roles are moving, and there's a lot of grumpy people that, had settled in and so forth, and you're out there pushing them. Which is harder for engineers to think product-y with some domain expertise, like they're vertical, right? To really understand property management, or, uh, the product side people to understand the code or the technical side?
That's a good question and clearly varies by team. But as we're seeing it, I think it is a little bit harder for the engineer to start thinking more like a product person than vice
Yeah,
versa. And I
yeah.
think one of the reasons for that is interesting. You talk about kind of the structural change of the teams is historically we've measured engineers by velocity, how many points they've completed, right?
Yeah.
That's kind of how we have structured it. And one of the reasons I believe that we've done that is because it took so long from a requirements gathering for an engineer to
Oh,
build
yeah.
something and then for the customer to actually see it. I mean, it took weeks, and maybe even months. And so it was difficult to measure the impact of the engineer in correlation to the actual delivery. And so we settled on this pointing system to say like, oh, it's going to fix some sort of
Yeah,
unit.
output, not outcome. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So we're starting to see again this transition of it's better to be measuring engineers based on the actual outcome.
Eh,
So not just how much code did I push, how many PRs did I make, honestly, not even the quality necessarily, but more about what impact did I have on the customer. And because the cycle time is reducing now, we're able to take an idea and actually flesh it out, build it, and then deliver it in a matter of a week now. We can actually look at an engineer and say, hey, you're being graded and you're being evaluated based on the value that you're driving in the customer's hands and be able to see that. And that puts more ownership on the engineer, which is a
yeah,
little uncomfortable for a lot of them,
yeah.
right? But
Not the
it's
startup
faster.
engineers who talk to customers like you did in the beginning, but you get 10 or 12 engineers, they like to like to hide out and
It's true.
not spend as
You're not
many.
wrong. We're seeing a shift, and I think the engineering community is gonna have to start recognizing that they've gotta be a little bit more customer facing. They've gotta be a little bit more engaged. And most importantly, they have to be willing to say, "I'm not sure that particular feature is what our customers want." We
Right.
want them to raise their hands and not just say, "Product manager gave me my ticket. I'm gonna work on my ticket, and I'm gonna ship it." We want them to push back and say, "No, this is what I think they really want. This is what I'm hearing. This is what I'm seeing," and have them be more product minded as well.
Okay. Well, here we go. Let's talk about it right now, right? That we have founders that I know in my Practic Founder peer groups, 45 of them. They're all on this AI transition journey, some faster than others. Everybody's moving and so forth. But what do you say to founders in your portfolio or otherwise where my CTO isn't all in on this, hasn't built the infrastructure, hasn't moved out the laggard engineers who don't want to deal with this and play, or even the engineers that don't want to think about the customer as much? Is this a simple conversation? We're going this way and you need to choose if you're with us, or are there different ways to do that? We're going here. Do you want to join us conversation?
That's a good question. I think a couple thoughts in that arena. The first would be from an engineering leadership standpoint. The best engineering leaders that we are seeing now have found their way back into the code at some level. And one of the big reasons for this is if you take a CTO or head of engineering and you've effectively have to some degree throw out the last 15, 20, 30 years of their career. Because a lot of the things that they have grown up on no longer work.
Yeah.
And some of the fundamentals, of course, still land, they're still there, but a lot of the way that we're operating is not the same. You can't just go hire a CTO and repeat over and over and over like we've done for
Yeah.
the past 15 years. You've got to figure things out and you've got to understand what it looks like. And so the reason we say
Hands on, you would say, right?
CTO, yeah, they have to be
Yeah.
hands-on because they have to be experiencing it because guess what? Their team doesn't know exactly how this is gonna operate, but neither do they. No one does. And so we're seeing much more and more those that are a bit more hands-on are willing to get their hands dirty and actually sit side by side and say, "Let's figure this out together. How are we gonna operate together?" Those
Okay.
are the ones that are moving fast. Those are the ones that are excelling. So I think you just as you would today say, I'm not going to hire an engineer that's not using AI, or I'm not going to hire a CX person that's not using AI. So use that same rubric on your current leadership and say, is this the type of person that I would hire? And if not, that's when you have to have that head on conversation. You mentioned, like, how do we do that? We are, I think, taking a stance right now that it is time to draw the line in the sand.
Okay.
And that line in the sand is not to say, you know, get on or get off as much as
Okay.
it is to say, this is the direction that we're moving. This is what technology is doing. And what we've tried to do is we've tried to say, when you have those conversations with engineers or even with your leaders, set up a ladder, so to speak, a scale of 1 to 5. What does it look like for this particular position, whether that's a CTO, whether that's an engineer, whether it's a CX person? What does it look like to use AI in my position as a beginner, as a intermediate, as an adopter, as an evangelist, right, as an expert, and really
Okay.
just lay out very specific, these are the activities that we expect in our organization. This is what you should look like at this point in time. And if you're a 2, fine. Doesn't matter. Self-identify, have your manager help you identify, I'm a 2. These are the activities that I do that qualifies me as a 2. Then as an organization, it's incumbent upon us to say, here's how you get to a 3.
Yeah.
Here's how you get to a 4. Right? So you don't, yes, you do want to have the head-on conversation to say, and we are saying this loud and clear, AI, yes, it will take your job, but here's the opportunity to help define your role as to what it looks like with AI, and here's this ladder of progression to get there. You have to have those conversations because if you don't, you're not preparing your own teams for the future, and it's going to be difficult for them even if they do exit and they go somewhere else. That same type of mentality is going to exist in other companies, and I think we have the responsibility to help them get there.
Well, it's not like we're not going to have engineers. Their job is changing substantially. Everybody's job is changing substantially here, not just in product and engineering. But I mean, are you hiring fewer engineers? Or presumably, and Mark Andreessen talks about this, like everybody knows, it's not like we have fewer engineers. We can do amazing things. So let's get more engineers who can do amazing things. Are you seeing less investment in engineering as a whole across these companies, or
No,
yeah,
we're actually not. So I think we've kind of adopted the mantra either more with the same or more with more. Is that, coming from the growth equity side where we're saying, no, like we've got to move fast. We're excited about it. Like we are still reinvesting, but you bring up a good point as to whom are we investing in? And this is a reality. We are seeing more expensive engineers, more expensive than I think we've ever seen before in the past. But hiring the appropriate talent and the right talent is more key now than it ever has been. In the past, you threw a bunch of engineers, you had, we called them code monkeys, whatever. Like we just threw problems at them and they solved them. But we're asking these engineers to level up and be more product minded and actually think through these problems and to deliver customer value. That's a different profile that we have to focus on and requires, again, either higher costs and takes longer to find them. That is a reality that we're starting to see. So I wouldn't say our teams are shrinking by any means,
yeah.
at least, not actively trying to push people out by any means, but we're trying to find the better talent that can be those 10x engineers, as opposed to maybe those 2 or 3x engineers.
Well, and if something is gaining in leverage for the same amount of effort, you're getting a better business result, or more effort, you're giving even more with more there. Can you say something simple like, if in 6 months with working with you and your team, or like this new baseline, and we're moving forward, you ought to see product velocity, quantity, delivery increase, and maybe quality increase the same dimension here as well. Like, do you have something simple at the end that says, given the same amount of resources, you ought to deliver 50% or 100% more user impactful code? Would you
Yeah, it's
find
a
that in a useful way?
it's a fine line to trod here and gets a little dicey.
Yes.
So I'll give you kind of just some examples that we've seen from our portfolio. Some of the companies that have leaned in heavily on the AI development and have pushed out more, their velocity increased 300%, right? Like they were actually delivering
Woo!
more and
Yeah,
more, right? But do you know what happened? Their customers hated it. Like
too much.
yeah, they turned around and said, "This is too much." And like it's turned into this concept now where historically we've had to choose what goes on the roadmap and we have to decide what we're going to do. And now we can do everything. So the question has become less about can we build it and more about should we
Mhm.
build it. And so we've actually pivoted quite away from quantity of deliverable. We a lot of our companies, we're not even doing story points. We're not even doing velocity anymore. It's 100% related to outcomes. It's 100% related to this particular pod has this particular outcome and this particular goal. We want them to, improve speed of whether it's note taking, maybe for some sort of agentic note taking, and or reduce the amount of interaction that the end user has to have with our platform because a lot of it can happen with agents. Some sort of outcome that they're determining, and we put that outcome on the team, and we say, your job is to deliver this outcome. I don't actually care. This is hyperbolic. I don't care how you do it. Go figure out how you do it, but your outcome is X. Now that's your mission. Go figure out how to actually deliver it. So
Yeah.
when you ask the question of like, okay, 6 months from now, I'm using AI. What should this be? Should I be able to deliver faster? Should I do X and Y and Z? We're really trying to throw all those out the window and just go back to the customer and say, your sole focus now is you can deliver anything that you want. We can deliver everything that the customer asks for. We have to be hyper focused on what they need and what's actually going to deliver them value and find out what they want. So we've really driven towards this outcome based approach as opposed to any sort of metrics on velocity and speed and anything like that.
Well, let's talk about outcome, because it was simple. It was just output, lines of code and story points and so forth, and roadmap checkpoint, checkoffs. And some of it is, now you can get the meeting notes 100 times faster or something like that. But there's all, maybe that's an objective output measurement of that you can track. But there's the subjective. Do they care? Do they like it? Are they using it? All the way to, is it really impacting revenue? Is it reducing churn? Is it increasing usage and value? Are we able to raise prices because the value went up so much, or differentiate in the marketplace? The ultimate measure, I guess, is if you're accelerating revenue, it's working, something like that. But where do you measure that?
It's a good question. It's a little bit of a chicken and the egg situation
Yeah.
because as we're releasing agents into our products, you have to get usage and adoption to be able to know how to refine it. And a lot of times our clients are not willing to pay for it. And if we throw a paywall in front of it, then we don't get the usage. And so there's this little tension that we're seeing right now of how do you release agents and agentic workflows in your product. And the approach that we're taking and we're trying to evangelize is as you push these agents out, you know when you have actually created the value when your customers are willing to pay for it. And so
Hmm.
a lot of our approach is give it for free. Let them use it at some tier or some level. Maybe it's some sort of cap. I mean, there are true costs to these things. So you can't just let
Yeah.
them run
Hmm.
wild, but let them use it for free. Let them adopt it. Let them understand it. And then you end up measuring that usage. And if they're not using it, your agent's not ready. Don't go charge for it. It's when they're actually hooked to some degree and they say, man, this is making me so much more efficient. This is making me so much more productive. I'm willing to pay whatever I need and able to do this. And so it's this feedback loop constantly where we have to say, test the market, understand where it's at, get the user feedback. If it's not there, what else can you add to it? How else can you automate their workflows? And you'll get to the point where they cannot live without it. And at that point, that's where you can justify the renewal increase. That's where you can justify, okay, here's a tier now that's a premium tier that you can actually start charging for. And then at that point, you start seeing the revenue impact. So there's this theory in this world where we say, you know what, you may, as you're rolling these things out, you may see margins dip for a minute, right? You may see actually some of
Yeah.
the cost of these things decrease your margin, but if you can get the agent right, eventually in the long term, it'll end up increasing your margin, your revenue, because you'll be building something that they actually use or excited about, and they'll adopt and they'll be willing to pay for it.
We do need to talk about like different industries, different users are at a different place with AI. Not everybody knows how to use a chatbot in an app or tune agents that do things in their product and so forth. So, yes, it's getting everybody to think differently, our customers, our users to think differently. And eventually about pricing and value and everything. And we're all going through this turn. Doesn't seem to be stopping, right? So, just like mobile back in the day. I wonder if everybody's gonna want their app on a mobile phone. The answer was yes pretty clearly, and here we go with all of this. So, yes, and, let's talk about that within the development organization, the agentic approach, not just cool tools, software enabling developers to do more with less, but now agents are doing work. They're chugging away, they're running. Uh, how do agents fit within the organization of a development team?
That's a good question. I think I mean, dovetailing off what I just said, the same context applies to agents in our organization. We are not, as developers, as software founders, we're not going to pay someone else for an agent until we see the value of it as
Yes,
well.
right. Yeah,
It's the same thing, right? And so
yeah.
we've started creating this mantra of every organization should have agents on their org chart. And we say this for two reasons. The first is the moment you stick something on your org chart, there's an inherent value tied to that. And the rest of the team is going to hold that agent to a standard, the same standard that you would hold another,
Literally a job to be done. Yes.
literally a job to be done. And so if you
Yeah.
put it on there and you say, man, they're not performing, that just like you would put someone on a performance plan if they're not performing, you put your agent on a performance plan to say it's not acting as I need it to. It's not providing enough value for me to actually consider it on my org chart. And so you think, okay, I'm not going to throw it out. I'm not going to throw it out. The question is, what do I need to add to this agent to actually treat it like a team member, treat it on my org chart? So that's number one. And then similarly, you have this concept of we've all been through this. Our CFO may come to us and say, "Hey, we've really got to strip some costs, and who are we going to cut? How are we going to structure the organization differently?" And if you can't look at that agent and say, "Oh man, I have to have that," and you're ready to get rid of them, they're not there yet. It's not ready. So we have this continual evaluation that we've been going through from agents on your org chart, agents in your organization to say what value are they delivering and what do I need to build in order to actually let that agent contribute at a level that I truly feel like it's contributing, just as another teammate. And this process of constant evaluation drives how our teams are structured and how they're organized. We spend a lot of time talking about now how, yes, you mentioned the engineering role has changed to some degree. Engineers are less and less focused on solving the actual problem, and they're more focused on building the harness, the infrastructure, the agentic workflows around all of our processes to enable the agents to build. So you think of this kind of shift in this process, the engineering mindset has to be I'm less and less worried about solving my customer direct problem coding wise and more
Mhm.
around building what the agent can live in to be able to solve the customer's problem. So we're starting to see this shift as well as agents develop and they are able to be improved in our organizations as we start building the frameworks around them for them to operate in.
Okay, so let's talk about that. What are typical elements of the framework? And maybe this is for non-technical founders to be able to conceptualize what their AI forward CTO is working on there. Is that test harnesses, like everything that gets committed runs through a big test harness, magically, checks everything? Is this validating code or fixing bugs, or is it the being the infrastructure to speak English about something and having it generate code, right, and know that it's not gonna break something? What exactly is going on out there?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest ways that we've tried to kind of quantify how we know when this is happening is everyone on their team, they've got that one person that specializes in something that they're really good at. Every time we make a change here, this person needs to review it. Or every time that we make a change here, this security person needs to, go
Oh,
through
right,
it,
yeah,
approve it, right? And so what we've ended up saying is, look, we need to be able to expand their control, expand their ability to be able to proliferate their knowledge throughout the organization. And so we will create an agent that literally codifies the knowledge and the skill set of that particular engineer into an agent that can be run 24/7. So I'll
mhm,
give you an example. I mean, a code review agent is something that everyone should have. But there's a lot of code review agents out there that you can just buy off the shelf, right? Name your vendor, they've all got one, and you just run through it, and it'll run through the standard best practices of, is this got code smell or is this, does this code look bad? But what's really more important to me, at least, is every platform has that brittle area or that scary part, or I have to remember to do X, Y, and Z. And there's that one guy that always catches it. And if he doesn't look at it, I end up releasing some sort of defect into production. The agents that we're talking about are customized to the particular business. And I say, all right, if this guy knows this special thing, let's figure out how to describe what he does or she does within that code review process and codify that into an agent. So now I can have that agent run on every single pull request and it's able to use his or her knowledge every single time instead of hoping that they look at it. Same
right.
thing for security, same thing for testing. It's identifying your champions, those that you really point to on a day-to-day basis, and extracting their knowledge that's specific to your business into an agent that can run on code or product requirements documents or whatever it is. That's the amplification effect of being able to then now have an agent run almost on behalf of another person that's got their brain and their ideas codified into its actual knowledge.
So those are the kind of things that when I hear from technologists, tech founders and tech leaders and software, they're saying that AI is improved, but you still need to check the code, right? You are still responsible for the code, but if they're manually checking it, maybe your thinking is they haven't set up the harness sufficiently to preclude that.
Yeah, yeah, no, I think that's spot on.
Oh, okay, great.
We're so 6, 8 months ago, I think it was an acceptable statement to say, AI built all my code, but I still manually review everything. I look at everything
Right.
line by line and I make
Yeah.
sure it's there. That's starting to not age well. Our best developers in the portfolio are now no longer looking at every line of code. Their focus is around how do I make sure that the agents are double checking, triple checking, and are setting things up in such a way that I know and I have confidence that the code coming out is
Right.
actually going to be right and is going to be correct. And so you start stepping back a little bit. Now, I would be the first to say, like, I still review my code. Don't get me wrong. We're
Okay.
not totally shipping everything without looking at it. But you are starting to move away from line by line checking. If this functionally works and I have trust that the way that I have set up my agent to be able to build it accordingly and appropriately, then I'm good to go. Ship it, move on, and let's get next to the next customer outcome that I want to look at.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I do hear about product people in AI forward organizations committing code
Yeah,
because if the harnesses are there, it's not like
it's good enough.
you would let them. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And they're moving faster than others. Maybe there's laggard engineers on one side, and this customer forward AI forward product person is moving faster. So I do hear about that
You've
out
got
there.
it. It's this concept of the person that's closest to the problem builds the best solution. And so you have, the engineer is 2 or 3 steps removed from the actual problem often. The
The
product
customer
manager
problem in this
The
case. Yes.
customer
Right.
problem, correct,
Hmm.
the customer problem. The product manager is a one step closer, and so as you start collapsing this and getting the product and the engineering team closer to the customer, they're gonna build a better solution, and that's why we're seeing some of these product managers actually deliver better solutions, because they're closer to the customer at the end of the day.
Do you think that with the new harnesses that make this all work and move faster with some confidence, does that require a lot of rewriting of legacy code? This is everyone's challenge. Does it lean towards rewriting or refactoring in chunks or retooling your data layer? I hear a lot about that. Our data layer isn't modern for AI. What's the range of possibilities there? Can you get there with a code base, or do you have to start retooling or throwing it out?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think the R word, as we call it, the
Rewrite.
rewrite.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, I still
Right, I
have
mean,
hives from the years I've done that. Yes.
yeah, so it's the dirty word, no one ever says it. It is definitely within more reach now, but I think it's the wrong question to ask first. So the question that we actually have started to ask is, if I threw away or just put out of my mind, what's the platform that I have today? And you said, all right, what's the platform one that our customers need? Call it at the end of 2027. What is it that they're asking for? What is it they need? And what is it that I feel like the market needs? And you really sit back and do, a whiteboarding strategy session and just say, like, throw everything away, just like what is it that we actually need and what do we need to build for the future? And we're going through this exercise with each of our companies, trying to help them understand what that forward facing platform looks like. And then we're turning around and saying, can my platform support that? From an agent perspective, from a feature perspective, from a natural language perspective, from a data perspective, can it support it? And then we're saying, okay, at that point now, do we need to restructure, refactor, and rewrite in order to support that? And sometimes we're coming out at the other end saying, you know what, we're going to start completely fresh. I could actually I will go out on a limb here and say just about any software platform that exists out there with the right engineers, with the right tooling, and the right subject matter experts, you could probably rebuild just about anything in 6 to 8 months. So
I'm
if
seeing that.
that's what's that?
I'm seeing that.
Yeah, it's a reality now. And so if we determine that the future platform that we need to deliver for our customers can't be supported by our underlying infrastructure today, then let's go for it. That's a reality. That is something that can happen. Now, the difficult part is that's a different set of engineers. That's a different mindset. That's not just let me go build this feature and deliver it and turn to the customer. That's how do I actually work with this tooling to move fast? That's where you get your truly AI first engineers. You got to find the champions that are going to really lean into this tech and really be able to iterate through this and rapidly develop and build these things out. But this whole concept of rewrite is 100% more feasible than it was 2 years ago. And it's 100% more on the table when the underlying platform that we have today can't support what we need to build for the future.
And you have confidence in the forward team to get there
Correct.
faster. There's a
Correct.
lot of risk. We didn't know if we could get there, but we did. And customers aren't telling us exactly what they want in 3 years. They don't even know yet. And deep in these verticals, like Mark Sanderson's commercial woodworking shops, right? They're not out there thinking in 3 years,
Yeah.
this is what your solution's going to need to be for me. So there's a lot of really interesting bets going on here. It's an interesting time for founders
It's
and
definitely
funders, I guess, to be thinking about all that.
both sides of it. I think it's
Yeah.
it's definitely I kind of equate this, I think, to our latest version of the blockbuster moment. The blockbuster as in the store, not in the
Yeah.
movie,
Mhm.
right? I mean, you've got this opportunity right now where at the end of the day, from a blockbuster perspective, the customer wasn't asking for a different movie. They were asking for a different medium upon which that movie was going to be delivered. And I think we're in that same type of moment right now. Whether or not our customers are asking for it, it's definitely visible there. They still want our platforms. They still want our expertise in these particular spaces. They want us to be able to drive their business. But we are moving into a world where it's not going to be delivered necessarily just from our UX. They're not just going to log into a mobile app or to their website. They want these things to be available via other agents, external agents. They want some sort of natural language interface where they're not just clicking and pointing, but they can just dynamically ask for what they need to accomplish, and we're serving up what they need in a very specific bespoke format for their job or their particular need. We have to build for that. Whether or not they're asking for it right now,
Yeah, right.
we're moving into a world where they will be asking for it in 18 months, 12
Yeah,
months. So
yeah,
we have to be thinking, to your point, can our platform support that agent interface, the external interactions by other agents, a natural language version, not a keyboard mouse interaction, but
yeah.
maybe language? And if it doesn't, then let's start thinking about what that looks like to rebuild.
Okay. And amidst all the uncertainty of the LLMs and tools getting bought and sold and going public, and Anthropic's latest Fable 5, you know, ship and unship and all of that. Given all that uncertainty about what's happening with the technology also moving so fast, do you just say founders keep up with the latest and greatest and tech leaders in your portfolio and don't rely on any one tool or model, stay agnostic out there? Is that the best you can do in this uncertainty?
Yes and no. I think there have been, at least from an agentic tooling perspective, as we stated, there have been two leaders, I believe, that have come up, between Quad Code and Codex. And so we actually have said to our teams, things have stabilized enough that it's better to centralize on one, maybe two sets of tools, train your team to how to use those things, but be willing to be able to then transition. Maybe that's every 6 months, maybe that's every year.
Yeah.
Historically, we've stuck with the same tooling for 5 years or so,
Yeah.
but this could shift quite a bit. But it brings up a good point of figuring out how do you structure things so that you're not stuck vendor locked into those. So I'll give you more of a practical example. Most of our tooling, whether that be in the organization or in the development practice, we're really heavily focusing on what are called skills, which are effectively just text files that drive how an LLM and how an agent interacts. But that's completely portable from Claude to
Right.
OpenAI to wherever. And so trying to figure out, okay, how do I structure these things so I'm not just going all in on one vendor and how they do it? Make sure that you can pull some of those things out and allow that to be portable. And thankfully, like, we're in a world where that's possible. We
Yeah.
the Anthropics and the OpenAIs and of the world, they aren't saying like, no, you have to do it our way. It's only our way specifically, and you can't do it any other way. We do have a world that we can live in that allows it to be portable, and we should.
So those skills and instructions and frames, that you enable with all these LLMs are almost your IP these days, right? It's your guardrails and your deep knowledge and guiding all of this.
Yeah, no, I think you're spot on. Like, that's how you operate as a company are encoded within those skills, those markdown files. Like, that is to some degree becoming a little bit more. We talk about the crown jewels, right? The source code at some point historically has been considered the crown jewels of your application, and we're seeing a bit of a shift to say it's less about the code and more about how you orchestrate that the code is written. That's becoming a little bit more of the crown jewels, because that's how, going forward, we're going to be able to build anything any way that we want. We have to be able to ensure that we're building it the way that we want, a bit more deterministically, which comes from those skills, how those agents are actually running. I think there's a world where we move into the software platforms and the software companies that we run are more focused your IP around those actual agents and how they function, what their instructions are, those skill files, and how we actually operate as a company.
So it's an exciting time for the development side, engineering, product, and everything. But then we quickly move back to where's the differentiation, where's the value creation, where's the moat, where is the acceleration. Your product has always been part of that in software, and we have amazing software that's accelerating. It's the AI explosion itself is amazing, and it's product driven. But is product as a moat dead?
I don't think so, thankfully.
Okay.
I definitely don't. I think we are seeing, at least from our companies that we're working with, our clients aren't running out there and wanting to build their own system. They're not wanting to go vibe code their own platform. You had Mark Sanderson on
Yeah.
a couple of weeks ago, and like they have the software company has moved from simply just being, I'm going to deliver a platform and some code to you, and actually becoming an education aspect. They're
Yeah.
teaching the industry how to actually operate in that vertical, and the software comes along with it because it helps enable them to do that. The product, so to speak, I think is expanding, and you have to think through this,
Uh,
expanding beyond just the platform that you deliver and to the ecosystem that you can provide with
mhm,
your particular vertical. That's where we have to start thinking, and that involves everything from, yes, the actual platform and how you operate, but it involves the data that's being collected and how you can
mhm,
use that across your clients and externally. Again, that actually educational factor, like how do you actually help these people that are in these verticals that aren't AI forward? Like how do you help them level up? So I think software companies are the ones that are going to survive, the ones that are going to actually thrive. I believe are going to move beyond just simply providing a system of record. They're going to, yes, provide some sort of operating system software wise, but they'll provide much more to that for their clients to help them grow and build and expand their business. As long as we're delivering value in whatever form it is to our clients, they'll keep coming back for that. And we just have to be up and ready to move to help them grow their business themselves.
yeah, this is our challenge to massively increase the value for our customers so they don't even consider doing this themselves, and we stay ahead of our competitors out there and alternatives. It's a really interesting time, and all the practice finders I work with, they got one devil on their shoulder saying, "Oh my gosh, if I can write it this fast, somebody else could write it, and all the advantage of the last 7 years of us building code might go away. Holy crap." And then the other side, they're like, "But we have all these advantages. We have this data, we have the ecosystem, we have the integrations, we have the solution, the education, the insight compared to somebody on the other side of the planet writing code faster, being AI first faster." And there's a lot of excitement out there. So it's a really interesting time. May we live in interesting times. So thanks for being on the podcast and sharing your insights, Nick. What is the most unconventional prediction you have about where this is going, AI and software development, that you seem to have that the world doesn't seem to have yet? Do you have one of those in your on your list?
I would say at this point, I'm not sure anything's unconventional anymore because there's so so many people that have many things to say. But I do think maybe unconventional for the historical operator is I think we need to start thinking about our platforms. How do I say this? So historically, we've measured a lot of the success of our platforms based upon how much our users interact with it. And I think we're moving into a world where we're actually going to see the actual platform usage drop from an actual interaction standpoint. They're not going to be logging in. They're not going to be actually interacting. They actually don't want to. And
Mhm.
that's a difficult and a hard thing for us as operators of software platforms to accept. But if you really think about it, and you take a step back, and this goes back to what we were just talking about, our clients trust us in the platforms that we provide because we are driving the appropriate business logic on how to operate in that particular field. Historically, we've delivered that from a UX. We've delivered that from a point and click, and here's the workflow. But
Mhm.
really, the benefit of it is actually underlying in the actual business logic of the code itself. So we go back to this concept of Blockbuster. You have this opportunity now to deliver your core understanding of these particular businesses on multiple interfaces. Mobile, we were talking about mobile. We can go back to when it was delivered on the web from desktop. Like this is just another
Mhm.
transition. And we have to now support and think forward facing to say, how am I going to deliver these platforms in an agentic standpoint? There is going to be a third party agent that's going to be interacting with our platforms. And how do we lean in to be able to allow that, but still keep our value and maintain our true understanding of the business by orchestrating what's needed for you to be able to succeed in that particular business? Got to rethink the way that we interact with the customer. We have to rethink how our platforms are going to be delivered over the next 18 months. It's going to change no matter what. You got to either get on or I don't know, move on to a different job because it's happening and we have to support it. It's exciting. It's going to be fun. It's an opportunity. We have the ability to do so much more than we have in the past. And we just got to seize it by the horns, grab it, and just ride it. It'll be a ton of fun. It's going to be awesome.
Okay, well, there's some excitement. You're certainly right in the middle of it, working with dozens of practical software companies and all the great people in there and seeing what's working and helping them and testing yourself and right in the middle of where it's going. So thanks again for sharing your insights on the Practical Founders podcast, Nick.
Definitely. Thanks, Greg. Appreciate it.
Thanks for watching this week's interview on the Practical Founders podcast. Be sure to like this episode and subscribe to the Practical Founders YouTube channel to keep up with my weekly in-depth interviews with serious software founders who are building valuable software companies without big funding. You can check out my blog, all the podcast episodes, and information about my Practical Founders CEO peer groups at practicalfounders.com, or message me on LinkedIn if you'd like to connect. See you next week.